If you are interested in running or playing in a dark fantasy campaign but don't know which one, here's my thoughts on the Dungeons of Drakkenheim. Hello, my name is Andrew. I've been DMing for about 6 years. I've run several different campaigns, some that I came up with on my own, and some that are straight from adventures. I'm a moderate fan of the Dungeon Dudes here on YouTube, so a couple of years ago, when I heard that they had a dark fantasy campaign on Kickstarter, I decided to back it. This is the Dungeons of Drakkenheim. Written by Monty Martin and Kelly McLaughlin, and published by Ghostfire Gaming, it was released in 2021. I was attracted to the campaign because I like the idea of an urban campaign with many different competing factions, and dark fantasy is always an interesting subject. The players in my Drakkenheim game are currently 7th level, meaning we're about halfway through. It's 1st to 13th level. So I thought I'd give you my thoughts on the adventure so far. One thing that you'll immediately notice is that I've got all of these tabs. And that's because I think that one of the major issues with this adventure is that it's poorly laid out. A great example is that the information on the factions and their strongholds are separated, meaning that at certain points in the game, you're going to be constantly flipping back and forth. So for example, there are strike teams. These are sort of the lieutenants, the major players in each of the factions. They're detailed in the basic information on that faction, but those strike teams are almost always actually physically located in that faction stronghold. Another example is faction leaders. They are generally described in that general information section, right? Their bonds, their flaws, their ideals, their traits, and also their physical description. But they're actually physically located in their stronghold, meaning that you constantly have to be flipping back and forth. Another example, the seals. Seals are kind of the major MacGuffin of this game. We are to understand that they are highly important, right? The collection of them is ultimately what the campaign revolves around. We are explained in natural language where each of the seals is located. For example, the Chancellor's Crest is located in a lair below the cistern. Now, where exactly is that? I'm not certain. So if we flip to the back of the book, because that's where the magic items are actually described, is in the appendix, which is useful. It doesn't tell us where the actual page is, so we have to figure out where is the cistern. It's probably in the inner city. I think most of them are. And one issue is the table of contents. There is a table of contents, but it's crazy because each of the locations in the book is described. Okay, that's cool. But there's also lines. For the most locations have multiple lines where we're given the overview of the location, the interactions, as in who you're going to be interacting with, the area details, and developments, as in what can develop based upon events in that location. But here's the crazy thing. Each of those things is given its own line in the table of contents, meaning that in many cases, you will have 3 or 4 different lines that all have the same page number. What? That's crazy. So, cistern, I don't know, there's so many lines, it's kind of hard to read. So instead, I'm going to flip to the inner city, because I actually did something that made this book a lot easier for me to read, is at the beginning of each of the little sections, I created a post-it note with a little mini table of contents. Now, where is, it said cistern? Well, there's an old town cistern on page 131, and when we flip to that, we find, okay, eventually we find that's where the steward seal is. Okay, cool. Now, here's the thing. These seals are the major MacGuffin of the whole campaign. It should not be difficult to find them. There is also a PDF. The PDF makes it a lot easier to navigate some of this stuff, but it can also be kind of a pain. Specifically, these seals, right? So what you might do is you might have to hit Control F and put in steward seal, and you're going to get all of the instances, and then you'll have to go through and figure out, okay, which one actually tells me where it's actually physically located. That's kind of a pain. Another issue that I've experienced is inconsistent naming or writing. So, for example, we're still talking about these seals. They're kind of important. We have the Crown of Vestamar. It's the most important thing. It lets you cast Wish. That's cool. In the item description for the Crown of Vestamar, we are told A character may only attune to the Crown of Vestamar by performing a special 1-hour ceremony with 6 other characters, who are each attuned to a different seal of Drakkenheim. See the development section in Chapter 9, Castle Draken, for details on this ritual. Now, of course, again, it'd be nice if there was a page number. No. I mean, honestly, it would be easier to just write a page number. But no. So what we have to do is we have to flip to Castle Draken. And then we gotta flip to the back of Castle Draken to find developments. Okay. And then we get to the coronation ceremony. This special ceremony takes 2 hours to perform and requires 7 participants. Does it take 1 hour or does it take 2 hours? Why does it matter? Could it be done in 15 minutes? This is probably just because the dungeon dudes are the only writers on this book, so it's probably an instance of it just got missed. That's perfectly reasonable. Another instance, we have the Phylactery of Saint Vitruvo. Now, where is it? Okay, I guess it's in the Cathedral of Saint Vitruvo. Now, I'm going to check at the back of the book that it is the same. It is Saint Vitruvo's Phylactery. Okay. Now, where was it again? That's right, Saint Vitruvo's Cathedral. Where is that? Probably in the inner city. Area details, where we get all of the monsters. And this takes a little sorting through to actually find it. A mutated Gamir chaplain, wearing the tattered robes of a flamekeeper, conducts the blasphemous rites before the altar of skulls. It carries the High Flamekeeper's Phylactery. Is it St. Vitruvo's Phylactery or is it the High Flamekeeper's Phylactery? Again, this is probably just another instance of inconsistent writing, or there was an earlier version where it was one of those, and then it got changed later, and then nobody went back and changed it again. Not a huge deal, but it does come up. Now, one of the things I love about this book is the factions. The factions are, to me, incredibly compelling. Now, one thing that's not pointed out in the book, but it's pretty obvious to me, is that these factions have irreconcilable differences. And ultimately, the whole idea of the game is to come to an alliance with some number of these factions. I mean, one faction could probably rule, but it's more likely that a coalition of 2 or 3 is going to get together and destroy the other factions. Okay, so one of those conflicts is between the Queen's men. They serve the Queen of Thieves. They're, a bunch of brigands and thieves. Pretty simple. Versus the Hooded Lanterns, a remnant military force. Now, they conflict, although they don't know it necessarily, but they're conflicting over the political outcome of Drakkenheim. Another faction, the Silver Order, a knight of virtuous paladins who wish to destroy the Dark Delirium and end the contamination, conflict with the Falling Fire, who want to embrace the contamination and have their strange rituals. The Amethyst Academy want to research delirium, and so they also come into conflict with the Silver Order. I think 2 of these factions are badly named, and I just already renamed them. I call them the Silver Order because that, I think, communicates what they are, but the full title is the Knights of the Silver Order. That's kind of wordy. Really, the Silver Order communicates it well enough. And the other faction that honestly is a little confusing is the Falling Fire. Now, their full title is the Followers of the Falling Fire. Again, I simplified things because I think it sufficiently communicates what they are. But one thing that I keep confusing is it the Falling Fire or is it the Falling Flame? Now, the reason for this confusion is that the official religion of this whole region is the Sacred Flame, whereas they are the followers of the Falling Fire. What the difference is, I couldn't say. One idea that I find really interesting is that there's no transportation magic. Right? So you can still Misty Step, but you can't cast Gate, for example. Another thing that's interesting is that the gods have an indirect influence. They don't directly involve themselves, and there aren't actually specific gods. Wizards also require natural ability in order to become spellcasters, which means that they're more similar to sorcerers or warlocks, right? The arcane spellcasters are all kind of in the same cast now. And, interestingly, they are prevented from becoming king or queen. That's interesting. Now, these are a lot of interesting ideas, but honestly, I mostly threw them out. One thing I love about this campaign is the sandbox, and the map that comes along with it is excellent. So you're able to literally put a map in front of the players, give them a couple of leads, say, hey, there's this Rat's Nest Tavern, there's this Oscar Yorn guy up to the north, where do you want to go? And that is so great, because it gives the players tons of options. The issue is that they spend some time deciding, and then eventually they pick a place to go, and then they go there. And maybe that place is not where you thought they were going to go. And so now you are in kind of an issue, because when you flip open the book to that specific section, you kind of realize that you're in a pickle, because the area isn't really finished. All of the areas are like 80% of the way done, where you, the DM, need to do some work to actually finish the location, make it all kind of mesh together. I feel that I have some virtue as a DM, but being a master improviser is not one of them. So I need some time to actually prepare the stuff that they're going to be going through. Now, you can throw some random encounters at them, and that will potentially buy you time. But ultimately, it's only buying you time. It's not actually solving the issue. You still need however long, an hour or whatever, to actually prepare the location. That's because most of the locations aren't quite finished. Basically, I had to throw out all of the encounters as presented and start from scratch. Because the campaign is at least notionally a sandbox, what level the characters are expected to be when they go through a certain chunk of content is not obvious. And so you can run the risk of having wildly imbalanced encounters, which is not fun. Ultimately, I would say that this campaign is a lot more work than I was expecting. It requires a lot of work on the DM's part to actually finish the content, because honestly, a lot of the stuff feels unfinished. A good example is just a couple weeks ago, my party fought the Crimson Countess, and I'm going to be totally honest, the Crimson Countess stat block as presented in the book is kind of boring. It's not very interesting. It's basically a young dragon, but with a recharge Thunderwave, right? Thunderwave, that the first level spell. Now, Thunderwave's a fine spell for first level, but it's way too weak sauce for a recharge ability, especially for that to be her main ability, right? Instead, do something crazy like what I did. I gave her Chain Lightning. She only got to do it once, but it was incredibly dramatic. That's one thing, is there's sort of hit or miss with a lot of the stat blocks. Some of them, I think, needed a little bit more love, specifically the Crimson Countess. One example is that there are no handouts in the book. No handouts in the PDF. There are several letters, there are several notes throughout the campaign, but if you actually want to use those handouts, it requires you, the DM, to open up a Word doc, copy and paste it from the PDF, reformat it, and then print it out for your players. Why can't they just be separated out in the PDF so that a DM can easily print them out and give them to the players? Because the thing is, you can't just read out the letter to them. The players are not going to actually retain any of that information. Also, it's fun to have props. All in all, I would say that this campaign is fine, but I feel like it's kind of unfinished. I'll probably make another video when the campaign is done, kind of going over the whole campaign in sum, see if there's any other interesting things that have come up that I liked, or the things that I felt like were unfinished. That being said, I will see you guys later. Peace.